Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 94. I think it's episode number 94. I have no idea, actually. Of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the worldwide headquarters of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We have kind of a unique episode this week as we highlight the Global Leadership Summit. We have Ray Hardee and Sharon Padgett with us today. Ray is the lead pastor and cultural architect for the Pointe Church in Belmont, and Sharon is the CEO of the Gaston County Family YMCA. YMCA. However, we have to point out that she is the first three-peat guest of Gaston's Great. So I'm not sure what that means, but that's just a fact of this episode. Ray and Sharon, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
Happy to be here again and again.
Yeah.
Well, Sharon is great. I mean, she's
fantastic.
There's no doubt about it.
So as usual, now this one, Ray, this will be a first-time question for you, but I'm not sure what Sharon will come up with this one, but maybe just start with you, Ray. Tell us a little bit about yourself, anything you'd like to share before we start talking about the Leadership Summit.
Well, so I think Gaston is great. And as a matter of fact, while Gaston County residents might be listening to it, a bunch of counties around us are listening too because they want to be like us.
Absolutely.
There's no doubt about it. I always call the Gaston County the crown jewel of the Carolinas because where can you jump on an airplane in 15 minutes, go climb a mountain, and then go down the streams or the Whitewater Center in a world-class U.S. Olympic place? It's just an incredible county. Jump on a bike and go around a varied terrain and that kind of stuff and enjoy this county. And it's just an incredible place to be. So I'm a West Side Charlotte guy.
Okay.
So I went to Redneck Mech, West Side. Anyway, my wife is a North Gaston girl. She imported me 38 years ago and 11 months, 2 days, 3 hours, 17 minutes, and 42 seconds ago. I really don't know that. June 23rd is my anniversary. It'll be 39 years. And we've been here that entire time. And so several times in my career, I've had opportunities to go somewhere else, and she would say, well, are you going to be coming home on the weekends? So I said, okay, I get that message. She's
so you would be going solo.
That's right.
Somewhere else.
And all my kids live here, my grandkids, except my youngest daughter. She lives in Charlotte because she refuses to live anywhere but the big city, at least for right now.
Well, nobody's perfect.
That's right.
Thank you. Sharon, anything to share there, or do we need to go back to the other two episodes?
No. I'll just add, since you were talking about Charlotte, I'm going to say that I'm from the southwest side.
Monroe,
County.
Yes.
Yeah. Pride of the Monroe High Rebels at the time.
And the Wingate Bulldogs.
And the Wingate Bulldogs. I believe that Monroe is the Skyhawks now, or the Red Hawks, or something like that. Change their name. But
I have no idea.
Yeah.
We're not the Indians anymore. We're the Phoenix, something like that at West Mac.
Yeah, who knows?
Actually, Phoenix is pretty cool. Actually,
it's a cool name.
Yeah.
Rising from the ashes.
Something that's important to know about me is I can go back to my 5th grade year and sing the 50 states in alphabetical order.
I think
that's episode 4.
Yeah, I think that's the third time we've heard that, and
it's my only gift.
It's the same eye roll for me everything. The third time.
I want to hear that.
This episode is
some other time.
Did you actually do it on that episode? No. Okay. Well, so that didn't take long to go down that rabbit hole. So I want to start with Ray.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So tell us again. We're talking about the Global Leadership Summit. So you haven't heard about that. It's an event I actually, attended one, I don't know how many years ago it was, but haven't been involved otherwise. But Ray, tell us, this is a question for both of you, but I'll start with you, Ray. Just tell us a little bit about it. So our listeners, I'm sure there's listeners who have no idea what it is, haven't heard of it. Some I'm sure have, but tell us about it and how did you get involved with it, and then we'll let Sharon clean up.
So the Global Leadership Summit is what I would call a mashup of government, private sector, thought leaders, nonprofit leaders around the nation and even around the world. They come together once a summer for 2 days. I originally saw this at a site in Charlotte at Mecklenburg Community Church, and now we have chosen to import it into our town. It is not just a faith thing, right? But we are hosting it at the Pointe Church. As a matter of fact, one of my goals is I hope that we can grow the audience so much so that we have to move it out of our church because it's such powerful content. The best way to describe it is fresh, actionable leadership content from today's thought leaders applied in the current setting. And what makes it great is that there are places where you can fly to this, where this is the mothership is in Chicago, but we broadcast it to Site 246. 246 is easy to remember here in Belmont, North Carolina.
Okay.
And essentially, it's kind of like a conference in your backyard from thought leaders that you pay tens of thousands of dollars to go see in other cities and pay for hotels and flights and all those kinds of things. But you can bring your entire team. And I promise it's so good that your money comes back to you if you don't think it's good.
Absolutely. Yeah, my first experience with it was terrific. So, Sharon, what would you add to that, if anything?
Very well described, but I would say my first experience was at the actual site in Willow Creek in Chicago, first time I went. And it was so impactful because you were there in the masses of thousands and thousands of folks looking at the same thing, watching the same thing, discussing the same thing. And then your team afterwards was spending time together at dinner and in the hotel room, and that was great. It was a lot of money. And so I was so passionate about this when I came back. The YMCA has a conference retreat center in Black Mountain, the YMCA Blue Ridge. And I was so passionate about it, we got it started there. And but now that it's probably been 5 or 6 years, it's important that more of our staff be able to go. And so when I found out the Pointe Church was hosting it, I was like, wow, we can stay here, get the same experience, in the same speakers at the exact same time, and we did that last year, and it was just really impactful.
Fantastic. Plus, you can sleep in your own bed. It doesn't disrupt your family schedules.
You can run back to work if you have to at lunch. I mean, it's great.
Absolutely. And Sharon and I believe as part of the Gaston 2040 vision, or One Gaston Vision 2040, that we want our county to be the leader in leadership training in our local area and make it absolutely the preeminent place to go, even over Charlotte.
All right, so that's a good segue. So why leadership? Why what is the need there? Why this versus, I don't know, something that is more faith-based? I mean, that's a bad example, but I'm just saying why what is so intriguing about that, and why is there such a need for attendees, people to attend a conference like this, or for lack of a better word? So let me start with you on that one too, Ray. Does that question make any sense? Or
Absolutely. Well, first of all, the old adage that everything rises and falls on leadership, meaning it's not going to get any better than that. And the phrase that we use, and I'm the summit champion for our local area, is everybody gets better when leaders get better. When leaders get better and we set higher goals and we do things together and we collaborate, we're able to do a whole lot more together. And people look up to leaders that are constantly growing. And this is a great opportunity to do that in a convenient fashion.
Okay. Sharon, what about you? I mean,
I would say that if you are an individual that all you do is sit behind a wall all by yourself making widgets, and that it's not important to anyone else but you, then this may not be for you. But if you work with people at any point, any time during your day, and you engage with people and you build relationships, this is by far the number one leadership conference to be a part of.
Let me ask a question. Knowing what you know now, what was your view of leadership, say in your 20s, versus your view of leadership and the most important facets of leadership? Because for me, I think that's my journey has, looking back, I had no concept of what real leadership is until reading, learning, hanging out with people like you.
Thanks for the compliment.
Well, I mean, seriously, whether it's through the community organizations or whatever that we're all involved with, how has that view of that evolved in both of you, and to get us to this, to a point where we recognize that an event like this is so important and so impactful?
I think for me, it comes all down to the relationship piece. It doesn't matter what position you hold or what your title is. It's how you engage with others. And I would say that the pyramid has become more and more inverted the older I get. That the CEO or the lead pastor, cultural architect is not at the top.
Right.
it's side by side or on the bottom.
Absolutely.
To lead up.
I actually think of, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in some of my biggest mentors, or I would say folks that I look to for leadership, have led up and have encouraged me, whether they've been executive directors in branches that have really set the example for me to be a better leader as the CEO of an organization.
Absolutely. I think everyone has influence. Even the person who makes widgets might be the leader of Sunday school at church, or might be the head of the 4-H club and whatever, as far as that's concerned. But I think the key thing for me that differentiates what I used to think about it, I used to think that leadership is about flash, about qualities, and about somebody that has extraordinary charisma. What I've grown to understand is leadership is about, and Peter Nordhaus has this in his book, Leadership, it's about coming together where people that are influenced come together in a collaborative process to make something better or to improve something. And really, the older I get, the more it's about the process and not about the flash. Mm-hmm. And we've had a lot of flash in all kinds of ways, from the left and the right and everywhere in the middle. And what we've really discovered is that process is what drives everything, no matter what you're trying to do. If you're trying to run a marathon, if you're trying to build a bigger business, if you're trying to increase sales, if you're trying to get more members at the YMCA, if you're trying to get in better cardiovascular shape, if you're trying to get rich, if you're trying to get famous, there's got to be a process to it.
I think John Maxwell is the one who said, like, leadership is influence, as opposed to, gosh, I don't know, what I would call old school, push, put the finger down on somebody, or title.
Right.
I think when I was younger, I think, well, that guy's got the title. That person has the title. They must be a great leader. I mean, I've learned the hard way that is not the case at all. So, with both of you being involved with it for a while, I mean, both maybe globally, yourself going to Chicago and then being involved here locally, have you seen any anecdotal stories or anything you can point to of an impact that you've seen, or something you can relate back that, man, yeah, that person over the years has come forward, or just, does that make sense?
Absolutely, in all kinds of different ways. So we've hosted it for 5 years, since 2018, 19, so this is our 6th year. So is that right? I think so. When people saw Brian Stevenson, who authored the book Just Mercy, talk about how he defends those that have been inappropriately charged, or there's evidence they've been inappropriately charged, there are people that came out of that room and had an entirely different perspective. What's interesting is that particular year, we had about 30 or 40 people from the sheriff's department. And he was talking about how some people had been unjustly treated in the legal environment. But we always do a postmortem with our summit partners like GSM and the YMCA and places like that to say, okay, what was it you liked and what was it you didn't like? So I actually probed and asked that question. They pushed pretty hard on the justice side. And both of those officers with Gaston County Sheriff's Department said, we get it. We need to hear that too. It's kind of like, it was an aha moment for them. And so for me, that's where it all kind of comes together. The most wonderful moment ever was last year in this perspective, just in terms of the fact that there is a God, there is a spirit, and there is an influence that works behind the scenes to influence us. So we work with Thrivent, which is a partner with the Summit, Thrivent Financial, and we were part of their Action Partnership Network. Basically, we got some dollars to do something to help other people. So we partnered together with Least of These Carolinas, which is a local foster care agency that helps kids. And so we said, let's pack bags of hope for these kids. And so we basically were planning to do this at a time right after the first morning, before lunch, and we had an assembly line, much like on this big, beautiful, long former mill floor, which is now a table. And we had all these items from beginning to end, and we were going to get everybody involved in doing this service project before we had Chick-fil-A for lunch, which we served to everybody that was there last year. So right before we did this, up on the screen is the last thing before lunch. They had this 10 to 12-minute montage of how we can make a difference in foster care. We had no idea about that.
You're kidding me.
Seriously. And so it's kind of like I still get chills I think about it. And so ultimately it looked like we had planned the whole thing. People walked down there and go, let's get planning. I said, nope. That was totally something that was kind of one of the God winks or God moments.
Yeah. That would have been chills probably.
Absolutely. And so the fun thing about it is you're applying leadership to real life. It's not just applying leadership to get elected or applying leadership to become the CEO. It's how can you apply your leadership to make a difference, period.
Right.
One of the other things I like about the summit, too, is that it's not just sit and get. And there are...
That's a great way to put it.
Sit and get. There are bands that play. There's singers, national, Grammy Award winner singers that will present at the Global Leadership Summit. And then they do some of the coolest videos that are impactful across the world, right, of great work that's being done in leadership in Zimbabwe or Tanzania, or and it's just, you're like, wow, this stuff, and it's reaching. Global Leadership Summit is reaching those places all over the world with the simulcast, and it's powerful.
So after it's simulcast here to 150 to 200,000 people around America in multiple sites, it's then taken in the next several months and translated into languages that go around the world. Okay. And then it's there's actually a time where people can actually fund that's given at
so
the
literally
summit.
Millions of people are seeing.
Right.
Or
more people
being
outside the United
being
States.
exposed to this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's talk about the local event itself. So we kind of where, when, how, all that kind of stuff, and then why. Why do this, Ray? I mean, you kind of talked about it already, but let's get into the details of what's happening here locally.
Sure. It's always the first Thursday and Friday in August, which this year lands on the 3rd and the 4th. It's like a 9 to 5 event, so you have time to get ramped up in the morning. Actually, since it starts in Chicago time, you've actually got some time to get there and get an extra cup of coffee and that kind of stuff. And then it ends in the afternoon before dinner time, so people can make it home and beat the traffic, both on Thursday and Friday. And essentially, we have people on site that are helping us to host. As a matter of fact, I presented to the JCs of Gaston County not too long ago, and they said, let's give you some energy. Let us help you to welcome people and kind of be almost like people would welcome people to a church event or to a play or something like that. Let us be your hosts. So it's really cool to see the county kind of getting on board to help us to do lots of different things, not just to sit and get, but as a place to serve as well, too.
Okay, very good. How about the list? I know you've got some of the speakers, and for somebody like myself, I mean, I've intentionally exposed myself to a lot of reading, a lot of authors, a lot of podcasts. So a lot of these names for me are recognizable. In fact, I just read, thanks to Ray, I just finished reading Leveling Up. Man, that was impactful, and it's circulating on the leadership team here.
Fantastic. That's what it's about to me.
Yeah, it's a really good read. And so, kind of share some of the maybe content, what the expectations are, speakers.
Sure, I'll go through real quick. We've got they have 12 speakers this year, and we have Secretary Condoleezza Rice will be speaking, Pat Gelsinger, who is the CEO of Intel, a lady named Liz Bohannon, who's famous in the fashion industry. She's been presented on Vogue and Redbook, Fortune, the O Magazine. All these folks are authors. James Clear, who is the founder of Habits Academy, speaks a lot about habit formation.
Terrific book, Atomic Habits.
Yes, Atomic Habits.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he'll be there speaking. Patrick Lencioni, who is a name that many people know as a speaker and an author. His probably most famous is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And he'll be speaking. Anita Albersi, who is a Harvard professor, author, and she is real famous in the study of business of entertainment, media, and sports. I'm wondering if Jessie Cole has read her work. Albert Tate, who is on the faculty of Global Leadership Summit, and he is the lead pastor of Fellowship Church out of Los Angeles. Craig Groeschel, who's kind of the head speaker, if you will, kind of the leader. Summer champion. He's also on faculty.
You got a great podcast.
Great. Yeah. He's the founder and lead pastor of Life Church, which started many moons ago, but it's been all internet based, no in person. So it's really powerful. Dave Ramsey, going to teach us how to save some money.
Yeah.
What's that famous thing he always says?
If you live like no one else, one day you'll be able to live like no one else.
That's right, in the future. That's right. I love it. Of course, author and Francesca Gina, who is a tenured professor at Harvard, wrote the book Rebel Talent, Why It Pays to Break the Rules at Work and in Life. Erin Mayer, professor of INSEAD. Is it INSEAD? INSEAD. She wrote the book No Rules, Rules, Netflix and the Culture of Reinvention. Ryan Leak is the CEO of the Ryan Leak Group. His latest book is called
Leveling Up.
There you go. That's 12 questions. 12 questions to elevate your personal and professional development. And then that's it. Those are the 12 speakers.
And then the interims, there are various different kinds of smaller videos and vignettes from around the world.
Mm-hmm. So what I like personally about the list is that it being in, I don't know, the last 10 to 15 years especially, I've just immersed myself in this type of content. But it's a good mix of the names you've heard of and not so much that not maybe some you haven't heard of. Mm-hmm. So that means that's some fresh information and outlooks and opinions. So, matter of fact, I watched a summit. A live stream summit that Dave Ramsey recently had with Mike Rowe about the labor shortage, and Craig Rochelle was one of the guests on there, talking about how they have worked to overcome that and the challenges of that. So if you're a business owner or involved in business at all, the last few years, labor can be a challenge at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When the government starts sending you checks for doing nothing, it's hard to battle that, isn't it?
Yeah, and that was one of the specific topics that they addressed. So it was really good and worth the time. So
I was also going to mention that some of the past speakers have been John Acuff and John Maxwell and Andy Stanley. Ron Howard was last year.
Yep.
Good old Opie.
Yeah.
Melinda Gates. And one of the things I loved about John Acuff, he's a comedian too. I mean, he's hilarious. But he wrote a book called Finish. And I think there's many of us who are probably listening to this that have started 50 million things and haven't finished one.
Not me.
Not you. Nope. And when I was reading it, of course, I was thinking of myself, but mostly I was thinking of my husband. And so I gave him the book to read.
Who will not be listening
Who will not be listening today. And he loved it.
Oh, wow.
And started finishing some projects. I need him to read it again. But again, great stuff to pass along.
Yeah, that's good. So, and this is the type of thing when you hear all those speakers, there's going to be something for everybody.
Everybody.
I mean, so that's again, and you know what? I've been going to conferences and reading, and I've never went to one where I didn't pick something up. If I was intentional about wanting to pick something up, right? I mean, it's just sometimes you just have to be ready for that stuff.
Right.
So why? And I typically ask a question about why is Gaston County better because of this organization or whatever we're talking about. So why? How would you both answer this? How is Gaston County potentially going to be better because we have more people exposed to this here in the county?
Well, I think it goes back to what Ray said when everybody. What was the quote?
Everybody gets better when the leader gets better.
Yeah, everybody gets better when a leader gets better. And I have had several folks, I would say over the past couple of months, who have said, "Oh gosh, I'm not a leader." Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
sure
you are. And it just depends on how you're going to lead. You lead in many ways. And in those ways for which you do lead, how do you get better? And you get better through things like this. And you get better when other leaders get better, because then when they see you struggling, they come with you with a book and say, hey, you may want to read this.
Right.
Or, hey, I prayed for you yesterday. Or, hey, I've been thinking about you because I know you're struggling. Or, I can't believe how I've seen you grow over these last couple of years. Come to Global Leadership Summit with me.
Absolutely. So there's also this cross-pollination that goes on between people that are thought leaders and people of government and people of faith and people of nonprofit origins and people that are, Angela Ahrens was there from Apple, the vice president of all retail from Apple a couple of years ago. So there's something interesting when people understand that leadership principles are classic no matter what the field where people happen to be. They apply everywhere. So, for instance, one of the regular summit presenters, he's not presenting this year, is Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great and Built to Last. He's a professing atheist. Yeah. But he's come to this event, which is marked by people of faith as well, too, to show that there is that cross-pollination that goes across. And what's really interesting to me as I read his books is kind of like, man, it's like you just read the ethical code of the Bible and how to take care of your family and that kind of stuff too. But I do want to accentuate that it's it's not just a faith event. It's not just a business event. It's not just a government. It's very intentional that way. The people that are selected come from all walks of life so that different kinds of people can learn from each other. The other great thing about that is people that come for different reasons cross-pollinate one another with their influence in what they do and the people that they talk with and while they're there. And then also it makes you want to go out and say, well, I want to read some of these things these people have written. I want to watch their YouTube videos. And it's extraordinary to see the kind of impact just that can have on somebody. Because if somebody chases a speaker and a thought down a stream that leads them to watch this video and read that book and think about and apply that principle and leveling up, for instance, for you, then from my perspective, just by handing you a copy of a book that has been very influential, you took the initiative to take it and read it and apply it. So many of the things are downstream after taking this stuff and putting together a process to make leadership better.
Yeah, a couple of things there. First is, heaven forbid if we actually interacted with somebody who thought differently than us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so much can be learned. Now, there was a time when I was like, hey, I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm right, correct, about everything. I mean, that's kind of one of the things I'm afraid that's gotten us to where we have in a few areas of society is that, whoever's speaking the loudest is right. And that's just, that's an issue.
I just did a podcast this morning. Ours that we hold is called the Next Step Podcast. And the gentleman that I interviewed this morning was actually a person who works with a nonprofit organization, a governmental organization, and he's moving to a for-profit job potentially. One of the things that he said is he served in the Air Force. And he said, even when you're over in what he calls the giant sandbox, which he called Qatar or Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, and he was serving with the Air Force, you find that people, even if they might have more clothes on you, like hijabs for women and the long clothes, and they're people that are like us. And he said, here's the thing that I learned by traveling around the world and serving in the U.S. Air Force. He said, the extremists are the ones that keep us mad at each other.
Yep.
Most people tend to be somewhere in the bell curve of the middle, and we need to pay attention to that in everything that we do.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And the second thing I would say is conferences I've been to, organizations I'm involved with, sometimes it's the in-between conversations. It's the conversations over dinner or lunch is where I've gained maybe more than some longer term maybe because of developing some relationships. And just recently I was at a conference in Nashville back in, I guess it was early April, and we've developed a relationship with a vendor that we had never met before, and they're doing some great stuff for us. So that's just an example. And we met at breakfast. It wasn't at a session that they were doing. It was, I just happened to we happened to sit beside each other, and I asked a couple questions. I mean, so you got to be willing to go have those conversations as well. You never know how you might be impacted. And the third thing I would say about my leadership journey is discovering how my actions, my mouth, everything impacts others. Mm-hmm. There was a time when I was like, well, what difference does it make? What I say? How could what I'm doing and saying impact others? That note that I sent to somebody, what's the big deal? But man, that was a hard one for me to learn, is that
it's those little things that make the big difference.
Yep. And
it really is.
So I've learned that, and I've learned that one the hard way by not paying attention to that at all when I was younger.
Right.
And I was making an impact.
Haven't we all?
It just wasn't the impact that I had hoped I was making.
Absolutely. You want to go back to the people and say, I'm sorry. Right?
Stephen, I want to follow up with what you said a second ago about meeting those folks at the conference.
Yeah.
And what I have noticed at the conference like Global Leadership Summit is there are good 15, 30-minute breaks. And after you've heard a great speaker, you find people who are just meeting each other in the lobby and having conversation about what a speaker maybe just said, or making the connections to network. And it's people that are from the faith community and the business industry. I mean, like we've already said, it's people from all walks of life.
Hospitals, nonprofits like that.
Stay-at-home moms that are just happy to be, that are coming to learn. And so for me, that's a big piece of the conference for me. And also being able to have those conversations of something you just learned with the youth director that came with you, or that you wouldn't normally have at the Y, or conversations with another nonprofit leader that may be there that we haven't had the opportunity to spend time together.
Right.
But we're talking about leadership, and those are the powerful moments for me as well.
And it's those moments that make a big difference. I saw this video not too long ago of this man who talked about how the UPS or the FedEx guy, one of those, changed his family's life because he would show up and deliver a package. The kids would be out in the driveway, and he'd shoot baskets with them. He spent a minute with them every week or two. But also, unfortunately, he lost his life as a shooting victim. And so he gave this tribute to say, the FedEx guy or the UPS guy, the delivery guy, we'll put it that way, changed my life. And those are just the moments.
Yeah, those opportunities are everywhere, every day.
Absolutely.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere, every day is a great way to put it.
Matter of fact, I've a skill that I started, I don't know, very unprofessionally 20 years ago, a little over that, when I met a mentor of mine, a guy named Mark Madison, who was just here a few weeks ago doing some training with us, but he got me journaling. And I kind of, dabbled in it for 10 years. And now, it's 5 or 6 days a week that I'm journaling about something. And one of the things I put in there often is it's a gratitude list. And I'm grateful for the opportunities to impact others. Now, the next step is what are you going to do with those opportunities, right? So, but they are everywhere. And I think when I was younger, I just had no concept to recognize those moments at all. So you come to a conference like this or session, something like this, and even though we might have all different opinions, different outlooks, different kind of political views, you're in a group of people who are trying to get better, trying to learn. So that's kind of the real impact there. So is there a question before we move on to some of these, briefly shift gears on some of these super important questions? Anything I haven't asked? We'll make sure before we finish, right, that all the listeners know how to find out more information, how to attend, anything that we want to share there. But anything I haven't asked that I should have asked?
No, not at all. Basically, it's about $150 to go.
Okay.
It gets a little more expensive as the summer goes along. But think about the savings in terms of if you brought a whole team, if you have 10 people on your team and you spend $1,500 and maybe you spring for another $500 for lunch for both days, let's say the people eat for that, you spent a couple $1,000s where you could have spent $20,000 to $25,000.
Oh yeah, two of us went to the conference in Nashville I'm talking about, and in between the conference and the hotel, and we spent $2,000 easily. Yeah.
So it's a great way to invest your money and invest your time.
Absolutely.
It's kind of a way I kind of think of our community and leadership in general as like a merry-go-round, and we give it big shoves every once in a while, but ultimately just when you get it going fast enough, it's kind of just a gentle shove that keeps it going. And if you start the right kind of process, this can be for some people the big first shove,
yep.
Or it can be for other people kind of like, this is something I want to do in the process of my life because I want to get better every year.
Another cool thing is the folks that are speaking that are the authors have their books there for sale.
All right, cool.
And so Ray will have things set up at the church. Is that right?
Absolutely. And Thrivent Financial actually gives us some books to give away too. So they're one of our partners, and we appreciate them for doing that among the other things they've done.
And it's a come as you are. You don't have to wear a suit and a dress, do you?
No,
okay.
Not at all. Not at all. As a matter of fact, I always tell people if it's above 50 degrees, I got my flip-flops.
That's right.
My flip-flops on. Anyway,
all right. Well, very good. So we're gonna shift gears here. Remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County, and we're going to do some fact checking on some of these questions to make sure Sharon answers them the same way that she answered in the past. But we're going to call this is going to be the Leadership Summit Speed Round of Questions. Again, another non-creative name for this.
Hey, before you do that, I forgot to say this. Go to globalleadership.org. That's the site that tells you everything about it. Globalleadership.org.
We'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. So
maybe we can put the thumbnail for the 1-minute video that I sent to you earlier. Yeah,
that's good. That's a great point. Show notes. So this is really what all the the YMCA staff, the Pointe Church staff, everybody at One Gaston 24. This is what they want to know about the both of you. Okay.
Okay.
So we're gonna throw some wrenches, I guess, in this one too, for especially for Sharon. But we're gonna start with the classic question. Start with you, Ray. What is your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
Oh, the almond. Oh God, what do we call that? Almond Joy. Mm-hmm. Oh, just amazing.
Wow.
The almonds and the chocolate all melted together under that beautiful shroud of cream. It's amazing.
That's the best description I've had of anything from Tony.
That is
I like it.
So this is the only fact check question. So we'll go back and make sure you don't change your answers. So
I have no idea what I said in the past.
Well, then you still have to answer.
Okay, I'm going to.
So this will invalidate anything else you've said if it's not the same.
My favorite is the chocolate vanilla swirl.
I don't think that was what she answered, but we'll accept that. All right, we'll stay with you, Sharon. Favorite movie? Actually, it's a tough one, but
gosh,
that's how we roll here. That's how we roll here.
Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that's good. That's a lot of lessons in Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, I love that movie.
Lots of lessons.
Absolutely. Field of Dreams. If you build it, they'll come. There's some truth to that. It's not always true, but, ease his pain, go the distance. Those things still pop.
I was so fortunate I got to visit in 2018. I actually went to Field of Dreams in Iowa.
Fantastic.
We actually played some ball on the field. Oh, man, it was just terrific.
And I love
my daughter fell and bloodied her knee up on the field. She brought home some dirt from, on her skin from the Field of Dreams. It was
anything
great.
with Jim Carrey, Ace Ventura, Pet Detective. I will lose my tears laughing so hard at those movies. I love them.
Or since you went there, I've got to give a PS to It's a Wonderful Life and Chariots of Fire.
Oh, yeah, those are good ones.
It's an old boutique movie. A lot of people know. Everybody needs to watch Chariots of Fire.
Chariots of Fire is good too, yeah.
Absolutely.
Again, and It's a Wonderful Life. Have you seen that movie?
Oh, my gosh.
That's come up before, hasn't it?
Jeez, you need to see that movie.
Everybody under 15 like you needs to do it now.
All right, we're going to move on from. And what's the actor that you love so much? Yeah.
Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell.
Yeah. Will Ferrell.
Yeah.
The other guys.
Talladega Nights.
Okay, so Ray, favorite vacation spot?
The beach.
Out west, anywhere.
Favorite memory as a child?
Playing in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's good. I don't see that much anymore, it seems like.
My dad was a private pilot flying in planes.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
How about the last TV or online series you streamed?
Ted Lasso. I'm right in the middle of the newest season's episode.
We're recording this on May 30th. So the last episode, I think, is released tomorrow. Yeah. I think it's Wednesday. So by the time, it'll be over by the time this is. But I listened. That last episode last week was lessons on forgiveness and so many things. I mean, I
think that's where I am.
Yeah, it was really a good episode.
So that and Yellowstone.
You know what? That's one I haven't seen.
So both of these episodes, I always feel like I need to take like a shower after I've watched them. But they're just so real.
Oh, that's good.
Anyway.
Yellowstone for me.
Okay, that's good. So
don't go Beth Dutton on anybody.
I'm going to ask you this question.
No way, Jose.
Again, is there something else that very few people know about you?
Nope, I'm a pretty open book.
Yeah, after twice, I was going to say that one might be a tough one. Ray, how about you? Anything? Is there something very few people know about you?
So as an adult, I've always had some dreams of going to get some higher level education. So in the last 5 years, I spent a summer at Oxford, and I just got a graduate degree from Harvard last year.
Oh, I saw that on the website. Yeah, it was good stuff.
What?
Wow, that's excellent.
Ray, that's amazing.
One alumni day.
Congrats.
Anyway, that was fun.
Yeah.
What kind of degree? Divinity? Or?
It's in religion and social justice. It's a master's degree in religion and social justice.
Wow.
It made me learn to think. I tend to be, because I'm in a pastor's shoes, and I've come from a long line of people that are pastors, and my family's people. I've definitely learned to think with the right side of my brain. But going to Harvard allowed me to learn how to think with the left. And there's a reason that they're on the left. And, understanding that it's not if we had time, another way
to again, kind of going, intentionally exposing yourself to how different thinking.
Right. Our church made it possible for me to go and gave me the time and the wherewithal to do so. So I'm grateful for that.
What is it? I've got, 3 kids, 24, 22, and 17. The 2 oldest have gone off to college and graduated, and they have, both of them, in a lot of ways, have opened my eyes to a different thinking.
Yeah.
And
absolutely. I would go back to make the argument.
Most of it positive.
I've made the argument before that the argument between the left and the right is just like the argument Jesus would have between the Pharisees and the Sadducees in so many ways. If we had more time, I could talk more about that.
Podcast.
Yeah, that's another episode. So, I've been looking forward to this one actually for both of you. So, Ray, how about a book? I mean, I'm sure you've got so many, but something specific, maybe besides what we might see at the Global Leadership Summit, but a book or something, or an article, podcast you listen to that you could recommend to our listeners?
Oh, wow. I do listen to Craig Groeschel Leadership Podcast and the Summit Podcast. In terms of books, I'm going to give you a genre and an author. I've read everything John Grisham ever wrote, and I've read everything Nicholas Sparks ever wrote. Nicholas Sparks is Hallmark Channel. John Grisham is a little bit of FX meets whatever.
Yeah, that's a good description.
But I think it's important not just to read something that you always read in your field.
Yeah.
I believe that all of life illustrates everything that I believe, if we just pay attention to where we see the illustrations.
Mine's going to stay the same. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Yeah.
There you go.
Great book. And then in podcasts, I love listening to Andy Stanley and Craig Rochelle and some of those.
I think I told you this already, but I've got a group that I tend to send books to on their birthday and at Christmas, and that was the one, The Ruthless. That's the one I sent out last Christmas to this group of guys and friends that.
Awesome.
Matter of fact, they're all over the country. That's just something that I do on their birthdays and at Christmas. So that was the one because it was an impactful.
You get on the podcast another time, you're going to get on the list, I'll bet.
I don't know. I'm still not on the list.
Okay, all right. I think that's fascinating.
All right. So listen, I appreciate you kind of indulging us in those Gaston County related questions. So you've already answered this question a little bit, but a couple more questions and we'll finish up this episode. So Sharon, besides the upcoming and the ongoing Global Leadership Summit, why would you say for the third time Gaston is such a great place?
I think our municipalities, so many different municipalities, different people, everything's different. You go to Ranlow, it's different from McAdenville. You go to McAdenville, it's different from Bessemer City. That's one of the great things.
And we somehow get along.
And somehow we get along. And there are phenomenally great people in all those areas that think differently than I do. And so, that's what, in my opinion, makes Gaston great.
Absolutely. I'll pivot off of that by saying the very same thing I just said to start with. This is the crown jewel of the Carolinas and the Piedmont, at least the Piedmont, if not the Carolinas, because of all the geographical things. But I'll go back to the whole idea and piggyback off of the different municipalities. What makes them different is also going to be what ultimately makes us all greater together. Mm-hmm. We need to move beyond the Milltown fiefdoms attitude that have permeated towns, and we're having to do that now because the economy doesn't just depend upon the mill that's down the street. It's great to have that pride, and we should have that pride from where we grew up. By the same token, somebody grew up in a different kind of town. And I remember back during 2008, I was asked to come before the Chamber of Commerce when they were merging Mount Holly Chamber of Commerce and Belmont Chamber of Commerce, which became Montcross. And they said, would you please pray before? And I said, yes. I said, but before we pray, remember what Benjamin Franklin said at the Constitutional Convention. We must hang together or we will hang separately. So we need to do that as a county. We need to hang together deliberately. And that's why I'm so excited to work with Sharon and One Gaston 2040 and you and other leaders, because we got to be deliberate about doing that. Yeah. And keep coming back to the table and saying what's missing. And
it's easy to get in our little bubble here,
it really
whatever we're involved with day to day. I mean, that's a real concern. But I would say the last 8 to 10 years, I mean, I'm not sure the time frame, but there does seem to be just a overarching better outlook. And, I don't know when it started, but why not us? Matter of fact, when at the recent Gas Business Association event where the salute to business.
The one where you roasted your brother?
Yeah, it was.
I heard about that.
That was fun, actually.
Does he get a chance to do the same?
No.
No.
But, we talked about why not us here in Gaston County. I think there used to be more of a, we can't have nice things here in Gaston County or something, and that just seems to have changed, at least in my view, and, so many things that are behind that. So, again, I appreciate both of your answers there. Now, this last question, I say this every single episode, is my favorite question, but I'm actually going to make Ray answer 2 questions. So the first question, Ray, is, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Trust the process and come up with a good process.
Oh, wow.
Don't just trust the magic moment.
Yeah, that's good. I 20, I had no process. I was just,
like, wake up. What's the weather like? Let's go.
Right. What's a process, Right. All right, so I think I made you answer that question last time, but I'm going to change it up on you and then give Ray a chance to hear this question first. So, Sharon, if you could have coffee with one historical figure, who would it be and why?
I don't know. That's the next question. I got to think on that one.
Wow, that's a big question.
That is a
think on that too.
Curveball.
Boom! I told you.
Booyah.
I told you I was going to lay them on you without any warning.
So
would Billy Graham be a historical figure?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Billy Graham.
Why? For me, it seems self-evident why.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but
just his faith. But I think as he got older and with his just the wisdom, I think of life would be powerful. And then just how he raised his children. That Franklin's where he is, and Anne Graham Lotz was is powerful and in her own direct way and as a woman. And so I think that would in leadership and in faith.
Absolutely.
I think that would be my guess.
Absolutely.
My choice.
Really cool.
So
here's the deal. Remember the little Sunday school joke where the Sunday school teacher says, what's big or what's small and climbs trees? Kids go, silence. What's small, climbs trees, and it's gray? Kids are silent. Finally, the little kid says, I know the answer is Jesus, but it sounds like a squirrel to me, right? So besides Jesus, obviously, I'd love to have a coffee with Jesus. So this might throw you for a loop. I'd like to talk to Thomas Jefferson.
I was going to say that.
Okay.
No kidding.
No, I promise you. I was getting ready to say that, and I thought, nope.
So I've read almost all of Dumas Malone's 6 or 7 volumes of Jefferson. But Jefferson was such a portrait and paradox.
Oh, yeah.
Here's the dude who's writing about freedom, who's got more slaves than anybody else. I'd like to just kind of go, dude, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
What were you really thinking? Did you just have to keep your economy going that you really didn't believe in freedom for the slaves that you had and people that you had? I mean, and he was that kind of guy. He was always buying stuff and building stuff, and he needed the free labor, man, but just the way they took advantage. Even the thing with Sally Hemings, I read the whole thing about Sally, and there's no doubt that these children come from Thomas and Sally. But, what's interesting, the backstory that my mom shared with me years ago is when Jefferson's wife died, she said, please promise me you'll never marry again. So he kind of made Sally his wife.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I've studied him a little bit. There's a couple of great books that I've read on him, and I've been fortunate enough to visit Monticello and just see University of Virginia from up there. I mean, it is. But to your point, there's to me that time period and studying those individuals involved and trying to put some context on what they were dealing with. I just can't really put myself there, and get it. But that goes back to your quote about from Benjamin Franklin too. We got to hang together. We're going to be hanging together.
That's right.
That's wild. So, okay, this has really been good, and this is right down my alley. I just love this type of stuff. So we've already mentioned the website. Any other places that people can go to get some and find out more information about it, or
go to YouTube and watch other Global Leadership Summit messages from the past, or they will periodically drop little smaller vignettes that come out of a larger long form, and that's what you're going to come, aren't you?
Yes.
Are fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, he's signed
and we
up
have
like 6 or 7
We
folks.
have a group coming from here too.
Fantastic.
Yes. So any last words, anything to share before we close this episode out?
So first of all, thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Ray.
For giving me the opportunity to work with you to make this happen, because you have so much influence. I tend to think the YMCA is still the #1 social service organization in the world.
Amen.
There's penetration around the world, so thank you for that. But also thank you, Stephen, for doing this, because Gaston is great.
Yeah, I agree.
And thank you, Naomi, for organizing this and helping us to make this happen too, because we want to continue to sing the praises of this place that we live in.
She's the one that really has fingers on what's going on around here.
Fingers on Stephen.
I'm just Naomi's roadie. The mute button when needed.
Good deal. Thank you there for your company
Thank y'all
too.
so much.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, we appreciate that. We're very fortunate. We've been blessed. Our community is blessed, and we're lucky to be a part of it. So, like I normally do, I'm going to finish up with my own book recommendation or podcast recommendation, and kind of a quote or thought for the week. And I was intentional this week. This is actually a book I've read, many years ago, and one it's probably one I should share. But John Maxwell, is probably known as the leadership guru, at least for the past 20 to 30 years probably. And one of his early books was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. It's a good book. I would recommend if you're starting in your leadership journey. I think that's a good one, maybe kind of start with.
Amen. That's a great book.
Yeah, and my thought for this week, and I think Ray kind of touched on this exactly at the very beginning. If we went back and replayed this, he basically said this, but in a different, just paraphrase it. But Harvey Firestone said, "The growth and development of people is the highest calling of leadership." Mm-hmm. So when you get involved with individuals in those relationships, I used to think leadership had a different goal, but it is. It's making more leaders. It's developing. How can you help develop the people that you interact with and that you come in contact with? So I really, I searched, last few days for a really appropriate thought to share today, and that one really hit me square in the eyes, Naomi.
Hey, can I throw one more thing in here?
Absolutely, you can.
That one last thing I meant to say.
Sure.
Listen to Mike Rowe's podcast. It's like the rest of the story for those of us that grew up with Paul Harvey.
Oh, yeah, it's really good.
But it's really
He is one. Him and Pat Lencioni are two that I listen to every single week. It's called The Way I Heard It.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a great book, too, called The Way I Heard It, which these little anecdotal stories that kind of give you that surprise ending about who it is. But, yeah, I love him. And, of course, he's a blue-collar trades guy, really does a lot of work for our type of industry. So that's one other reason.
And he gives away $1 million a year.
Yes.
In scholarships to people that have dirty jobs.
Through his foundation, yep.
Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Absolutely. So to our listeners out there, thank you for taking the time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can. That's how we get heard, and more of these events and organizations can get noticed, and possibly, something good can come from this. So please share these episodes and share the information about the podcast. You can contact us here at our email, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And as Naomi always reminds me, a good 5-star rating helps get the podcast noticed. Thanks again to Ray and Sharon for being our guests today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Naomi Hunt and Amy Anderson from GSM Services, and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.